Welcome back to the Grounded in Simplicity podcast. I am Danielle from the Rustic Elk, and I've got my good friend Bonnie from the Not So Modern Housewife. We are here to help moms get back to basics and find joy in being less busy. And this week we are going to talk about silencing your inner critic.
Yes, and I know, me personally, it's been rather loud lately.
I think it's the stress of just, everyday
the last
life.
couple years.
Yeah. And it just, like every time I think, hey, it's going to maybe get a little bit better, like something ends, then just something else just compounds the whole memory of the last 2 years. And it just like progressively gets worse.
Well, that's like, I was in a group coaching call yesterday and we were talking about, I guess I was talking about the fact that, when this pandemic started, I felt really resilient and I felt like I could really just roll with the punches, pivot as needed. Like I was feeling super, super confident. And then over the last 2 years, it's like each time that I've been hit with something and knocked down, like I've just been a little bit slower to get back up. And it's like, I feel like I've lost that resiliency and that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it is just the fact that we've been so isolated and we haven't, we've basically just been stuck in our own heads. We've been stuck with our own thoughts and we don't have anyone else there. I mean, everyone else is stressed out and stuck in their own thoughts. So no one's bolstering each other up and no one's complimenting each other. And we're not all we're seeing day in and day out is all of the things we're not doing or that we're not succeeding at. And we're not having other people telling us, hey, you know what? You did this thing really good. Or you know what? You're actually really good at this.
Right. And I think that's kind of became like a societal norm though. Just, It
was bad beforehand, but it's gotten worse the last couple of years. And I think everyone is stressed and everyone is under pressure. And when that happens, we all turn inward. And I mean, good, bad, and indifferent, we're becoming a little bit selfish.
Right.
And, I think that sometimes we do, we need to have that compassion for ourselves, but we need to also have that compassion for others. And we need to remember that, you know what, it's okay to just be walking down the street. I do this all the time and people think I'm crazy. And I think it's just the fact that my mouth moves faster than my brain sometimes. So I just say it before I've had a chance to convince myself not to say it. But I'll just be walking down the street and I see someone who has a dress that I really like, or I really like their hair, or just the fact that I can tell that they've put a lot of effort into their hair or their clothes, and therefore it is important to them. And so I will just let them know, hey, you know what? I really like that. Hey, that looks really good.
Right.
And it's just one little thing to kind of bring a little bit of sunshine to somebody else's day. But it makes me feel good too, because I noticed something that was important to that other person when they didn't expect anyone else to notice.
Right. I think we don't do that enough. Like I said, it's kind of becoming a societal norm to just kind of go inward and not, compliment other people or talk to other people. It's just become like this, and you just keep this tight inner circle of people that you might talk to once in a while, but you're all just offloading your problems on one another and not, you know what I mean? Instead of just having that dialogue of, hey, I think you did this great, or, oh, that's really cool that you did that, or whatever it may be. And I think we've just kind of gotten away from doing that. Just I know when my husband and I got married, which was forever ago, everybody in the county would always wave as you drove past. It doesn't matter if they knew you or didn't know you, or, and now not near as many people do it.
Yeah.
And it's just, and that's over the course of 18 years, which, in the grand scheme isn't really that long. And we're not even at 2 decades, and we've already gotten to the point where, we can't even, just, and you don't even have to talk to anybody. It's just acknowledging that somebody's there and giving them a smile and trying to make their day better just by, hey, you exist.
I was driving by somebody yesterday and I thought it was someone I knew. But it turned out to actually I don't think it was the person I thought it was. But just the fact that like he was like staring me down as I drove past. So I also kind of assumed he knew me. So I waved. And then after the fact, like I was like, I think I just waved at a complete stranger.
But that used to be normal.
What's normal anymore?
Yeah.
Well, and now it's more normal for me to avoid eye contact with the people that I do know and wave at the complete strangers.
There is that.
That goes into a whole bunch of inner critic things, but we're not.
Yeah, it does.
There's a whole bunch of things there, but anyway, yeah. So, I guess before we get into kind of how to deal with our inner critic, we had kind of a story we were going to tell or we were going to talk about
that apparently you know like very little about, so it kind of defeats the purpose.
All right, so it doesn't defeat the purpose. I know enough. Anyway, all right. Along the thread of we tend to focus inward when we're stressed, I have not been watching the news. I have not been I've had minimal time on Facebook. If I go on Facebook, it's to check like 2 or 3 groups that I want to see what's going on in those groups, and then that's it. And maybe occasionally, if there's a fire in the self-sufficient life group, and I have to put it out because Danielle's not going on Facebook either.
No, see, I didn't even know about this until my stepmom told me about it because she was talking about how cruelly he was handled, but that's not the part of the story that we
okay. And actually so that is what kind of triggered me to dive deeper because all right, so back up so everyone actually knows what the heck we're talking about. So we're talking about Rich Strike. And the first thing that I saw about the race, because I didn't watch the race itself, was that he had bitten his outrider and the outrider corrected him. And being a horse person, I know what it's like to have people see that, like that little snippet of you having to correct a horse and blow it totally out of proportion because they've never touched a horse a day in their life.
Right.
And like I've got a big dumb gelding and I love him to death, but he is, I mean, he's got marbles for brains. And you cannot let him know how big he is. The second he knows how big he is, you're dead. I mean, he's not that bad, but I have handled warm bloods. I've been kicked in the head by warm bloods who knew how big they were and knew they could throw their weight around, and they became dangerous and they would bite. And the one in particular that got me in the head actually reared up and struck me with his front hoof, all because he didn't get his way. Right. I mean, we're talking about a 1,500-pound animal that has the mental capacity of a toddler. They will have temper tantrums.
Right. Well, and isn't Rich Strike, he's not gelded, right? I think he's still
probably not. Normally,
intact.
If they're racing, they're leaving them intact, right, on the off chance that they do well and they can breed them.
Right. So we're also talking about, hormonal teenager syndrome because he's 3.
He's only 3.
Right.
And I mean, you're normally not gelding anyway until 2 or 3 years old.
Right.
So, so he's got the hormones, and you've got fillies out there on that racetrack too. And 3 years old is when everything's starting to click.
Right.
But I mean, he was excited. I mean, that's all I can really explain it. Like I've seen horses come off a barrel pattern that you literally just have to let them run out of steam before they're going to stop because they just get so wound up doing the barrel pattern.
Right.
And the rider has to kind of be proactive with that. Otherwise they're going to get hurt. I saw one girl get her leg broken because her horse ran her right into a fence post.
Oh, geez.
Or it was they were coming out the gate. So they come off the pattern, and usually the riders, they just run straight out the gate as they're coming off the pattern. And she wasn't centered on the gate. And so her leg went right into that gate post. And I think she broke her femur, but anyway, So, I mean, we're talking an animal that can kill you. So if he had to get, his head yanked around a couple of times, it's like, it's really not that big of a deal.
Right.
Like, I mean, they do much worse to themselves just playing out in the field.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, so saw that whole thing, saw all the outrage. And of course, anytime I see outrage on anything, I want to see the other side of the story, because people get outraged about the most ridiculous things nowadays. So I go and I look it up and I find out the whole story and everything. And like, it's nothing short of a miracle that he won the Kentucky Derby.
Right.
He wasn't supposed to be there.
No.
He wasn't. I mean, I'm assuming they were at least training him for that length of a race. But,
yes, they were. I read a story about that.
That's a high stakes race,
mm-hmm.
And it's I mean, yeah, you're not gonna put your thoroughbred in, because what is it, a mile and a half?
Mile and a quarter.
Mile and a quarter. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to run them that distance unless you have built up their endurance to be able to run that distance. Because they go down that stretch, they are giving everything they have left. And then some, because that's where a lot of those injuries come from.
Right.
So, and it's an expensive race to enter. Yeah. So the fact that they're like, what the hell? There was another horse that scratched the last minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had 30 seconds to register him.
Yeah, or was it 30 seconds or 30 minutes? I can't. Anyway,
no, it was like 30 seconds. It was, yeah, they were like down to, like the last.
It was literally a what the hell not type of situation.
Right. Yes.
And yeah, and so he turns around and comes from behind, 81 odds. Whoever was actually brave enough to put money on that horse made out like a bandit.
There's somebody in Indiana that made $25,000 off of him. I'm like, we could have bet $10 and at least had something.
Heck of a lot better than the stock market's doing right now.
No kidding.
I'm sorry, honey. I pulled all of our retirement money out and I'm betting on horses now. Don't do that. Don't.
No.
Don't use that as your retirement advice. This is not a financial advice podcast. So anyway, yeah, but I mean, even going back further than that, like he came from pretty good bloodlines. I can't remember. I'm not real familiar with thoroughbreds. But I know they paid a lot of money for his dam. They paid a lot of money to breed him, because with thoroughbreds, with the jockey club, it has to be a live cover. So like a lot of other breeds, they will collect from a stallion and then they will take that one collection and they can split it, depending on his sperm count, they can split it across dozens of mares. And even then they're making 1,000, 1,500 and up per mare on the breeding fee. Mm-hmm. Jockey club, it has to be live cover, meaning that stallion has to mount that mare. So there is no splitting that breeding across multiple mares. Right. And you usually have to give them a couple days to kind of recover that sperm count before they can breed again. So jockey club, I mean, or any, like if you're breeding to these thoroughbred, these high dollar thoroughbred stallions, you're looking at $10,000, $15,000 and up. And, so yeah, they paid a lot of money to breed him. And then he came out and they're just like, he's a lemon.
Yeah.
They sold the mare. They like, and I think they tried racing him. He didn't do very well.
Right.
He wound up in a claim race so they could get rid of him. The guy that currently owns him was trying to claim a different horse. Mm-hmm. And then either that horse got scratched or that horse went to somebody else.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know he was trying to claim a different horse. He ended up claiming him, and he only paid like $30,000 for him.
Right. Which, I mean, again, you consider the amount of money that had gone into breeding and training that horse.
Right.
I mean, he was probably a $500,000 horse before he even got to that point. Horses are cheap, especially if you're racing.
But you think about, the $30,000 horse racing against the $1 million horses.
Well, right. I mean, usually, like they've been grooming. It takes on a whole different meaning when you're talking about horses, but normally they are grooming them from their 1.5, 2-year-old year to be a Derby winner, to be a contender for the Triple Crown.
Right.
And
like you said, it's like nothing short of a miracle that he won the race. Like he was what?
He came
like
from behind.
17th.
He made up the whole distance. Like that last furlough. I mean, it's kind of like a Man of War story. I don't know if you ever read Man of War. I will admit I know more about the fictional account of Man of War than I know about the actual Man of War. But basically, like, you know, I think they had a hard time getting him to race at first. Shoot, now I'm going to have to go back and refresh my memory. But he was just always like, he was like a come from behind. Like that's kind of where he got his rush of adrenaline, was overtaking all those other horses. But again, like he wasn't expected to really be that great of a horse. And,
right.
You know, so, and I mean, now he's a legend. So,
right.
But yeah, there's going to be stories written about him. I can see it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I see a, like a Disney movie or something coming out of this.
They might take the biting the other riders out of the story.
That'd probably be a good idea. He'll be up there with, Secretariat. My kids watched Secretariat the other day, and I'm like,
yeah,
hey, they could make a movie about Rich Strike. And
the great irony about Secretariat is that I don't think any of his offspring went off to be winners.
Well, there is that.
I'd gotten really into the Black Stallion books and read all of them. And because I liked his writing style so much, I went on to read Man of War. But it is a fictional account of Man of War, but it's from the viewpoint of, someone who may have been his groom, kind of. It's a really good book, but yeah, maybe Rich Strike is going to have one from the viewpoint of his outrider or his trainer. I mean, I bet he is probably quite the handful to train. And
I would imagine. So the whole point of this is because the horse, nor the owner, nor
Did I ever
the
warn
jockey,
you about not getting me talking about horses?
Nor the jockey. So all three of these people, and I believe, even his trainer, they had never even entered a race of this caliber. They never thought in a million years that they would have had a chance to win. Right.
Right.
And then, all of a sudden, Rich Strike just blows everybody away and wins the race by like 17 lengths, I think.
It was, yeah.
I mean, he just,
and they were probably just hoping he would place so they could get some kind of a purse. Like, right. make for winnings, something.
But not even the jockey had, ridden in
ridden in the race
caliber. Right. So you think about all of that stuff, and we talk about, the inner critic, and I'm sure, that they have their own inner critics are saying, this is probably really stupid and a waste of money because we're putting him in this very, very expensive race and he has like no chance of ever winning it. Just ask.
Well, and too, like anytime, I mean, using it as an analogy for our lives, anytime we do something that is bigger than anything we've ever done before, and it feels bigger than ourselves, you get that imposter syndrome that just tells you you're not qualified for this. Right. What are you thinking to think that you ever you have any chance at doing this and being successful? You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So. But all right. So with that being said, 20 minutes later, I like books and I like horses.
Oh, I love books.
You put the two of them together and I get excited. All right. So, first up, how do we deal with silencing our inner critic?
So first we have to be aware that we have an inner critic.
If you're breathing, you have an inner critic. Next.
No, but you need to beyond just knowing that you have an inner critic. You have to know, like you have to differentiate and separate those two identities. I don't want to say identities, do I? But you know what I mean. So,
and me, it's probably identities.
Which of the five?
So, I think the big thing here is recognizing those thoughts that are coming from the inner critic, and recognizing that they are not truth. They are just thoughts.
Right.
And so if you can identify the thought, and sometimes I can't identify the thought itself, but I know how I feel, and I know that this feeling is not causing me to take action. It's not serving me. And so I have to kind of work backwards from that and think about, okay, what thought got me to this place, or maybe what fear got me to this place,
Right.
And go from there.
Right. So, like I said, my whole point wasn't that we all have an inner critic, but it's just, learning to differentiate between the truth and, those negative thoughts that we all have that aren't necessarily true. Sometimes I think they probably are, but, you have to separate the negative untruth from the reality.
And I think sometimes too, when it comes to our inner critic, is when it comes to like that piece of truth, is we will take the one time that we failed and magnify it.
Oh, yeah.
And forget every other time that we didn't fail.
Right.
And just focus on that one failure. And I mean, honestly, there are people in our lives that will constantly remind us of that one failure. But
which we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
Okay. I'm going to stop talking now.
So the next point was, so change I to you. So like, instead of saying, and write it down, is a suggestion that I read. So like, instead of saying, I'm always late, or I can't do this, or I'm never going to, you change it to you. And then, so let's say I can't grow tomatoes. I don't know why I'm on this tomato thing, probably because I need to put them in the ground. But
I'm always targeting tomatoes, and I don't know. Yeah, poor tomatoes. Like,
yeah.
I think it's maybe because the ability to successfully grow a tomato must feel like the epitome of gardening for like all gardeners, and everything else is just gravy. I don't.
Right. So I can't grow a tomato. You would write down, you can't grow a tomato, and then you would write a response to that says, like, well, I may not be the best gardener, I can successfully grow a tomato. So you take, any of those negative comments, because in your mind, you're telling yourself, your inner critic is probably saying you, but your inner critic is talking to you. So you change that I to you, and then you write a positive response saying the word I. So like I said, like, I can't cook. Well, you would say you can't cook, and then your response could be, like, I may not know how to cook well, but I can learn.
Right.
So that was a tip that I read that I was like, that kind of makes sense, because you're identifying the fact that you have negative thoughts, but you're changing it from labeling you and then spinning it around and making it something more positive.
Yeah. Well, and like going back to the gardening example, I mean, you can even, because what I hear a lot of times is, I have a black thumb. I can't garden. I can't grow anything. Well, no, the truth is you killed a couple of plants. The truth is I kill a lot of plants. That is not what, that does not mean that you are incapable of ever growing anything ever.
Right.
You turned it around to, I can try again. I can learn from my mistakes. And I think that's like, a lot of parents nowadays are teaching their kids to say, I can do hard things. So that when they get frustrated, they have that affirmation in the back of their head that, okay, yeah, this is hard, but I can do hard things.
Right.
So I can do this. I can get past this.
Right. And deleting the whole, can't thing, because I remember when I was in school, like, my teacher would always say, can't do anything, because can't do anything. So,
you haven't done it yet.
Right. Exactly. So you have to, get rid of can't should not be in your vocabulary. You have to change it around and make it something else.
I'll just use ain't.
Ain't. It's not a word.
I ain't gonna.
That's not a word.
It is a word. Thank you.
It is not a word.
I am pretty sure it's in the Webster Dictionary. Is a conjunction for are not.
And so is HOTT hot, but doesn't doesn't mean it's a word.
Moving on.
Okay. So this goes back to what you were talking about with the people in your life that are constantly pointing out the negative things that have happened to you, because we all have those people in our lives. And so ditch the narcissist. I mean, the naysayers. I think we all have definitely people, you know, in our inner circles that are negative, not necessarily even just about us in general. Like they'll point out all the negative things about all of the things because it's just
there are, well, yeah, I mean, it becomes a habit. And also, like, there are studies that show it really does rewire your brain when you're only focusing on the negative, so that you continue to only see the negative. And it doesn't, I don't like the energy it creates, so I tend to avoid those people for that aspect anyway. But also because, like, I do not have the time or energy to focus on their criticisms, because at the end of the day, the only criticisms that matter are the ones coming from the people that actually, like, know what they're talking about, and the people whose opinions I actually care about. And if it's someone who is going to find a way to criticize what I do regardless of what I do, then I don't care what their opinion is.
Right, but your inner critic does.
Well, obviously, but this is what I have to keep telling my inner critic.
Right,
their opinion doesn't matter to us. Now, I will feel like crap afterwards after they have criticized me, and I will sit there and dwell on it. But at the end of the day, I remind myself their opinion doesn't matter.
Right. The only opinion that really matters is your own, but when you're talking about yourself. But, you know,
if I have a mentor that I'm relying on to tell me that, hey, you did this right, then their opinion kind of matters. But
right, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, really, whether or not you are happy with whatever the outcome is the only thing that really matters.
Now, the only thing I will say on this point, speaking from experience, ditching the naysayers is going to cause drama. The naysayers want their opinions to be heard. They want you to know that they do not approve of what you are doing. And when you tell them that you do not care that they do not approve, they are going to take it badly.
Well, yes, but the whole point is, okay, so maybe I shouldn't have said ditch. Maybe I should just say, you know,
no.
Distance.
I'm saying ditch them.
Okay.
I'm just saying, be prepared.
It's going to create drama. Well, that's just the type of people that those people are.
Well, right. That says a whole lot more about them than it says about you.
Right. But the problem with all those naysayers is, like I said, your inner critic feeds off of all of those things. So, you know, we all everybody expects me to, when really that everybody is like a handful of, you know, people out of 10, or not even a handful, you know, it's like 1 or 2 people out of 10 people. And you turn that into, well, everybody thinks that I'm supposed to. And then your inner critic feeds off of that. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And like, if you have a negative person in your life, they are probably going to tell you everyone thinks this way. Mm-hmm. When in reality, it is they think this way.
Right.
They do not speak for everyone. They are not mind readers.
Right.
All the more reason to ignore what they say.
Right. Well, because you get into this whole blanket statements and they're never true anyway, because everybody does not feel a certain way.
Right. I mean, Look at how many people have told us we're crazy for trying to produce our own food. And yet, all of a sudden, we're not that crazy.
Well, I think we're still crazy. It's just not that part. Or at least I am.
Okay. All of a sudden, everybody else wants to be like us. How about that? Now, they don't know what that entails.
I was going to say, wow, that's...
Peace be with you. Bless your heart.
Okay, so...
I'm in a mood today.
Now that we have all of Bonnie's wonderful Southern charm.
I've been down here too long.
I want to know why I have those same sayings when I don't live in the South.
Honestly, I picked most of this up from Southern Ohio. It has nothing to do with Florida.
I'm sure.
This episode was brought to you by Kitchen Botanicals, your sustainable gardening headquarters. Stop by kitchenbotanicals.com and get a look at our 2022 seed varieties, as well as supplies and pest control products to help you with your organic garden. 2022 is a great time to take care of yourself with our Pampered Gardener subscription box. Every month, you'll receive all natural self-care products, untreated heirloom seeds, high-quality garden tools, organic garden amendments, cute and practical supplies, and fun products that we know you'll love. This is your opportunity to take care of yourself in the garden. I started the Pampered Gardener subscription box because I had gone through a time of not taking care of myself and dealing with the stress that it put onto my body. I was ill, I was tapped out, and I felt like I couldn't possibly pour any more out of my empty cup. So I created the Pampered Gardener subscription box for women like me who wanted to get back to what they enjoy, but also wanted to love themselves. So we've put together this collection of gardening and self-care products that are geared towards women who love to garden. You'll get things such as gloves, lotion, bags, hats, sunscreen, mosquito repellent, things that you can actually use, but also things that you'll enjoy. And don't worry, there will still be plenty of gardening tools, seeds. We've created a subscription box like no other, by gardeners for gardeners. Order your own box today.
Not hanging on to the negative. And I think, a lot of this, we will get into what I call like negative thought loops, where the criticism and the negative thoughts and the, just all of that, it just keeps repeating over and over in your head. And the problem is, like, it gets worse the more it repeats and the longer it repeats.
Right.
And what I've found is that I really need to like write that all down, and kind of like how we talked about the changing the I to you statements. But write down those thoughts that you're having and then identify, okay, what is true, what is untrue, and what can I think about this instead that's actually going to be beneficial to me? Because continuing in that loop and continuing to think those things isn't helping you in any way.
Right.
Like the shame and the anxiety and all of it, like, yeah, it can serve a purpose. It's great when you need that like adrenaline rush or whatever, because it increases the, adrenaline and the cortisol and everything. But over time, it does you a whole lot more harm than good.
Right.
So it's much more beneficial to you to change it into a thought that is going to help you and is going to like create that action for you.
Right. And like you said, like the IDU and writing it down, I think, like externalizing those things kind of helps, it helps let it out, and it makes it so you're looking at it from a different perspective than just if you constantly internalize it.
Okay, I will be the first to admit I'm not a brain expert. I should know these things a little bit better. But, your frontal lobe is where all of your logic processing happens.
Amygdala.
There we go. I was close, sort of. It starts with an A. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were just putting the stress on the wrong.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I put the stress all over the wrong places all the time. So anyway, that controls our fight or flight response. So that is where our brain will usually go to when we have anxiety and when like we get overwhelmed and these negative thought processes continue. So I think there's something about putting it down on paper and being able to physically look at it. I think that changes that thought process back to that frontal lobe and causes us to look at it a lot more rationally with the logical part of our brain. Because then we can really dissect it, or maybe it's just me and my screwed up brain.
No, I think you're right. I think I learned this in psychology in college.
Oh, hey, look at that! I remember. Not saying I remember anything from college, but yeah, because then we can look at it. It's tangible. We can break it down. We can evaluate it, and we can realize it felt a lot bigger than it actually was.
Right.
And again, I think it's that fight or flight because, our brain wants to protect us. It goes back to, running away from tigers and lions and all of those happy things. Is when we feel threatened, it wants it wants us to run away.
Right. Well, they say that's where your inner critic comes from, is from evolution of, we don't have to run away anymore, but we would, criticize any failure, of course, in our minds, because failure could mean death.
Right.
And now, just because you didn't grow your tomato plant right doesn't mean that, you're going to die. You might starve, but hey.
There we go. but no, like, I think writing it down, it helps us to see that it's not as big and scary as our brains led us to believe. Like, it's not something we need to run away from. Like, we can tackle this, we can deal with this. It just, our brain made it feel bigger than it was. All right. Acknowledge your strengths. All right. So we're acknowledging our strengths. Mine is a twisted ability to laugh at any situation, even when it's inappropriate, especially when it's inappropriate. But no. Yeah. So I think here, and it kind of goes along with like writing down the negative thoughts, is like focusing on what you are good at and using that in your positive statements. Like when you reframe it, be like, okay, maybe this thing did go wrong, but I have the ability to do this. And so I can use this thing that I'm good at to overcome that one mistake that I made.
Right.
Practicing meditation or meditation and mindfulness. I'm losing it. Okay. This is actually one I've been relying on heavily lately. And not just meditation, but I also do a lot of hypnotherapy. I want to try to actually get Grace Smith on here. That's who I use for my hypnotherapy, the recorded hypnotherapy. But in general, anytime you have like these breathing exercises or just kind of anything that's going to help you focus on the now, because all of our anxiety and all of, really most of the stuff with the inner critic is going to be focused on the past. But if we have anxiety associated with that, especially if it's something that, some big goal we're trying to accomplish or something big we're trying to do, that then we're so focused on like the future and how we're going to fail at it or when or if or what, our inner critic has us convinced that we can't do that thing. And we're going to like, it's all going to blow up in our faces and we're all going to fail miserably and everyone's going to know about it. Right.
Right.
So the meditation and mindfulness really gets us to just like focus on right now. And one thing I also like is like letting those thoughts happen, but no longer attaching a positive or negative sentiment to it. Just the thought just exists. You feel neutral towards it. It doesn't have any value. Because again, I think that we tend to beat ourselves up when we're thinking something negative, and then we get more upset at ourselves for thinking the negative thing.
Right. Right. I think breath work really helps.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of apps that you can put on your phone. Most of them are free, where you can, there's one called breath work, but it's not spelled like, I think it's missing all the vowels. Anyway, I think it helps you kind of just focus and like kind of get introspective so that you can kind of dissipate those negative thoughts and feelings. And I also think, like getting outdoors, and we'll kind of talk about this in a minute. I think I put it down. Well, I kind of did. So I'll just put up journaling, because I think it kind of goes with meditation and journaling when you're not going to write this part down, but when you like go outside and you smell a flower or something, and then you realize, that you have the ability to smell that flower, or you feel the breeze on your skin, or, you go get in the water and you feel the waves lapping up against your legs or whatever, and just kind of being in that moment and being mindful and just realizing how those really, really simple things in your life feel. And then, being able to reflect and realize that you're able to do those things and some people aren't, for whatever reason.
The one,
and then you can write it down. Go ahead.
Yeah. The one meditation app I've been using is called Balance. And it incorporates a lot of that. Well, I can't say it's all. The ones that I do are guided meditations. And they actually have like series that you can do. So you will start out with just a very basic meditation, but as you work through the series, they will practice different techniques for breath work, practice different techniques for focus or being aware of your surroundings. And so, when you're doing anything that is being focused on your surroundings, with your eyes closed, you're feeling the weight of your body against the chair that you're sitting in. You're feeling all those contact points. You're feeling any breeze that goes across your skin. You're feeling the breath coming in and out of your mouth or your nose, and feeling it, cool coming in and warm going out. And all of those, they're all little things that just increases your awareness. And really does just help to like stop the racing thoughts and just refocus. And they say that it really does help to rewire your brain to, stop like the anxiety and the stress, and being able to, because the more you practice getting into the present moment and being more mindful, then the easier it is for your brain to go there every time.
Right. And then I think, like
the
writing
journaling
down
just helps increase that awareness.
And writing down, like I'm talking more, I should have put like a gratitude journal. So, like at least once a day, sit down and write something that, you're grateful for. And it can be something small, like being able to smell a flower, or it can be something really, really big. I mean, it's up to you, but I think, finding those moments in every day that you're grateful for, like something positive that happened, and writing it down so that when you have those negative thoughts, you can go back and say, you know what, this might've happened and it was crummy, but look at all of these things that happened that were fantastic and, made me feel good. And I had a good day because my tomato grew.
Right. Well, and even if, it kind of ends up being the same sort of thing, but if you don't feel like you want to do like a gratitude journal per se, even just writing down the positive things, and just focusing more on like, what is your takeaway from today? What is one thing you remember, one thing that you noticed? Because again, it's going to reframe your mind so that you're focusing on the good things that happen rather than the bad.
Right.
Without feeling like, oh, I have to be thankful for everything.
Right.
Because I know sometimes we get in that brain space where it's hard to feel thankful. Or maybe even it feels like too egotistical to say, oh yes, I'm like, the whole like hashtag I'm blessed. Like,
yeah.
So it kind of, I think that maybe it opens the door for focusing on a wider variety of things if we were just saying, writing down the positive stuff from the day.
Right. We talked about this a little bit last time, not jumping into the comparison trap, because we're constantly, like viewing things online and these little snippets in time of other people's lives and thinking that, their lives must be better somehow, or they're more capable somehow because we saw this itty bitty little snapshot in a moment in time. And so
they're adulting better than I am.
Right. But we compare, and then, that gets our inner critic going like, oh, well, she did this and you can't do this because, you're not as capable or, whatever as she is, because she took a picture of her pretty tomato and you don't have any tomatoes yet.
You're really on this tomato thing, aren't you?
I know. I'm trying to go with the theme of the tomatoes because I can't talk about horses with you.
I know. But yeah, it's And I mean, there's so many different things. And I even I see it with my husband does it a lot too. I hate to bring him into this, but seeing other people have all of this and why don't we have all of this and why can't I provide better? And I swear, there we go. So it's not something that just affects women, but
no, definitely not.
I think men really struggle just for the fact that there's this assumption that they should be able to provide everything for their family and be able to make all this money and be able to have the perfect house and the perfect car and all the things. And the poor men married us. And we're but we don't need all the things. We just want more chickens.
We need hay.
We need hay. I do need hay.
I do too.
I have to make the decision tomorrow. Do I go to the feed store or the hay store? And the only place I can find decent hay is an hour away. Yay!
Oh boy.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, I know this one gets me too, is because, I feel like I should be more of an adult by now. I should have my crap together. And yet here we are.
Well, I think that's the whole, I'm not trying to, keep up with the Joneses. So I think it kind of helps in some ways, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't, because we still, fall into that trap of, it looks like she's got all her ish together and I don't. So,
right.
Yeah.
And, you don't even have to go on social media to do it.
No, I'm not even talking about social media. I'm just talking about even to see a mom in the grocery store.
Why don't any of her kids have food on their face? What am I doing wrong?
How come her kids brush their hair?
Come on now. You're talking like miracle workers now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, I'll even run into the trap of comparing my life now to where I think my mom's life was at my age. But then I forget what my life was like growing up and realizing she probably didn't have her ish together either. She just faked it a lot better than I did. And she had family members nearby to kind of help. But yeah, it's everybody's story is different.
Right.
And so you can't know all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. And it just, I mean, really, at the end of the day, we're all struggling to keep our heads above water. So,
which brings us into
the imperfections of life.
Yes.
Accept the imperfections. Yeah.
So, because, I think we all have our inner critic is a perfectionist.
Yes.
And so, we all think that things have to be, at least to some extent, whatever our version of perfect is. And nothing in life is perfect. We're all imperfectly made. We are all, nothing, absolutely nothing is absolutely perfect, regardless of what your version of perfect is. And my version of perfect is going to be different than your version of perfect anyway. Right. So,
and it comes back to what is that person's priority?
Right.
If their priority is keeping the animal pens immaculate and keeping the garden tended, guess what? The inside of their house is not going to be immaculate.
Yes. And that's a season thing too, at least here, because, my house is definitely not immaculate right now, but in the winter time, it's a lot more tolerable simply because I don't have, garden and all that stuff to deal with.
Right. But, and here summer, when it's our rainy season, there is going to be mud everywhere and there's really nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. We had a week of rain here. And so there was mud everywhere and we haven't had rain. It's been really hot and everything's dried up outside, but there's still remnants of mud everywhere. But But yes, life is imperfect. We are all imperfect. There is actually, I don't think perfect exists. I think, like I said, like my version of perfect is going to be different than your version of perfect. And neither one of them are ever going to happen. And neither one of them are right or wrong. It's just, we have to let go of that perfectionism and realize that, it can be imperfectly perfect.
Yeah. And if you've got people in your life that are going to come over and nitpick everything that is imperfect in your life, then see our above point about
ditching them,
limiting their access to your life.
Yes. And then we can go into never say never. That's my favorite saying.
For all the perfect parents out there.
Yes.
That don't have kids.
Yes. So, we have that, like the whole, I guess it goes with the whole I can't thing. Like, I'm never going to. Don't ever say you're never going to, because number one, it's going to happen if you say that. So, especially with something you really don't want to happen, definitely don't say never. But I said I would never have goats again, and I have 4 goats in my yard. So.
Well, and I will say God has a twisted sense of humor.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So the second you say you will never do something, that is pretty much the moment you have guaranteed it is going to happen in your life.
Right. But beyond that, my point of the never say never was actually, don't think that something is impossible.
So more like, I will never make X amount of dollars. I will never make X amount of dollars. And in the next episode, we'll be coaching Danielle on her negative mindset. But no, I mean, you can achieve anything you want to achieve.
Right. Just like Rich Strike.
Exactly. I mean, he probably just wanted to get back to the barn so he could eat some oats, but anyway.
Well, yeah, but that's beside the point.
Those other horses were just in his way. But yeah, it's a lot of times, the only thing standing between us and what we want to achieve is ourselves. Mm-hmm. But what ends up happening is the inner critic takes over and convinces us that we're not capable of doing it. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because the negative thoughts cause us to not show up and not take the action and not do the thing.
Right.
And then because we didn't take the action and do the thing because we assumed we weren't capable or weren't smart enough or whatever.
Right.
Then we never accomplish it because we stopped showing up.
And it's just a vicious cycle that will continue on and on and on because we think that we're incapable because our inner critic told us so.
Right.
Yep. So don't think that things are impossible, which goes into letting go of those limiting beliefs and not thinking that things aren't possible because
like Danielle thinking that she'll never make X amount of dollars.
No, I was just kidding.
I have zero room to talk in this regard because this is exactly what I got coached on yesterday.
So I think, when we're talking about making X amount of dollars and saying that we're never going to make X amount of dollars or whatever it may be, we're never going to do. It's just,
we're never going to grow enough vegetables to feed our family for a year.
It is a self-fulfilling prophecy because I think we have to have that positive mindset and believe that something is possible, because if you don't and you continually have that negative mindset, then you're, like you said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. And so you have to try to, let go of those limiting beliefs and realize that there is an abundance of whatever it may be, whether it be, like money or knowledge and we're all, how do I want to say it? Capable of achieving that abundance. Right. It's not really the wording I want to use. But.
Yeah. Really it comes down to there's this one book that I was reading that it talks about growth set versus a fixed mindset. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing with a growth mindset is we grow up believing that people accomplish things because they have talent, because they have resources, because it was meant to be. When in reality, they accomplish those things because they studied really hard. They put in the time. They were practicing 8 hours a day, every single day. There's all this stuff that we assume is talent when in reality, it's just really hard work.
Right.
And so, to go ahead and like cancel ourselves out from the get-go because, well, we don't have what they have it's just lying to ourselves, really. I mean, because if the only reason they have it and we don't is because that was a priority for them to accomplish that. So,
and they probably had a more positive outlook.
Well, that too. So yeah, I mean, you have to tell yourself, you know what, this is what I want and I'm going to accomplish it. You have to make it a priority. But then instead of sitting there and thinking of all the ways that this can't happen for you, you sit there and say, okay, what needs to happen to make this a reality? Like,
Right.
If I want to grow enough vegetables to feed my family for a year, what do I need to grow? How much space do I need? Like, what are all the things? And even if you're not there yet, because I am not saying go out and try to grow a year's worth of vegetables and you've never had a garden before.
Please don't. You will get sober now.
What frameworks can you put into place? What things can you learn? What less and you create a system and you just work the system.
Right. And I think next time we're going to talk about, letting go of those limiting beliefs and just doing whatever it is you should be doing instead of coming up with excuses to not do it.
We can do that. Regardless of what you do, take imperfect action. This book I've been listening to, it's, what is the name of it? How to Keep House While Drowning.
Yeah, you were talking about that last time.
Yeah. One of the things that she says is anything worth doing is worth doing half-assed. So that's going to be my new motto.
Oh, I read a thing yesterday that said people like a full ass, so don't do anything half-assed.
I don't know. On the contrary, I've seen people show their full ass and I wish they would keep it to themselves.
There is that.
Well, hoping that we imparted some words of wisdom to you today. Please help us help more moms by leaving a review and sharing this podcast with your friends. And I think that'll do it. So we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Grounded in Simplicity podcast. If we were able to help you in any way, please share this episode with a friend and also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also join us over on Patreon at Grounded in Simplicity and help to support this podcast as well as become a patron and get a behind the scenes look at the creation of our podcast and even have some input on future episodes.